possible by a grant from Exxon, the National Endowment for the Arts, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, this station and other public television stations.
Marius Petipa, the Russian choreographer who established the classical style in ballet, had reached the end of his career, and there was no one to whom he could entrust his art. On January 22nd, 1904, he wrote in his diary, "All my work is reduced to ashes." On that same day, George Balanchine was born. When he was 24 years old, Balanchine choreographed Apollo to a commissioned score by Igor Stravinsky for Serge Diaghilev's Ballet Russe. Apollo is a young god who attains maturity through art. In the course of the ballet, he is tutored by the muses, and at the end, he takes his rightful place as their leader. Apollo was Balanchine's coming of age, and it remained in the repertory for the rest of his life, passed down from one generation of dancers to the next. Balanchine went on to make more than 300 ballets, and in them he built on what Petipa had done. His name was changed by Diaghilev, the impresario, who thought that George Balanchine would be easier for Europeans to pronounce. Balanchine had come from Russia, where he had been trained at the Imperial school in St. Petersburg.
I was 9 years old, and I started as a ballet dancer. I started with Emperor Nikolai II, and we lived really very beautifully, and we were dressed, we had the uniform, and we were sort of like pages, and we were trained to music and drama. I had to stay there because my family lived somewhere else, very far away, so they left me, and I only saw them once a year in summer. When I was very young, in Russia, the boys wear bangs, see, and long hair. Then when I came to school, they shaved me. And it was a disaster. They called me rat. And it's terrible. They ran away from the school and they brought me back. But then in a little keyhole, every day I saw 3 dancers came in and were taught by my professor. One was Karsavina, one was Paganova, and third one was Gert. And I looked inside and I saw this working. It's like a little game, you know. So since then, somehow I decided that it's very interesting to look at something like that.
Allowed to dance with the boys.
Tamara Jiva, whom he later married, recalls meeting Balanchine in a ballroom lesson.
Boys and girls. And when he arrived, he immediately took over the whole lesson from the teacher and started arranging all sorts of quadrilles and minuets and everything. He had such a, I would describe his personality as a mixture of a poet and a general.
Students at the Imperial school were put on stage at an early age, in operas and ballets at the Mariinsky Theater. Balanchine's first appearance was as Amour, a little Cupid in the last act of The Sleeping Beauty. At age 16, he made his first ballet for a school performance, and soon after graduation, he organized the Young Ballet as a showcase for his choreography, which was experimental and controversial. Meanwhile, the revolution had turned Balanchine's world upside down. The Tsar had been killed. The Mariinsky Theater and the Imperial Ballet School were closed. And when they finally reopened, it was in a climate of uncertainty. Food, heat, clothing, and transportation were scarce.
I wouldn't tell you how terrible it was anyhow, but finally I left. And I left with my friends who call ourselves Soviet dancers, and we went to Germany just for a few weeks. So we danced, 4 of us, in some small vaudevilles, and Diaghilev sent us a telegram to come.
Balanchine and his friends auditioned for Diaghilev in Paris, and he immediately asked them to join his Ballet Russe.
And he told me that you will have to choreograph some operas with this Monte Carlo opera. And he said, can you do it very fast? So I said, of course I could, because I was young. When you're young, you do anything.
We all adored him, and I can remember so well, I can't remember the opera now, the first time he ever arranged anything. It was a pas de trois in some opera, can't remember what it was called, for myself, Dubrovska, and Danilova. And I remember coming into the dressing room after and saying, I think he's a genius.
I was about 20 years old, and Stravinsky, Diaghilev gave me this ballet called Rossignol, and I first time met Stravinsky then, you see, and he played for me, and he said that's the way it should be, and the tempo should be like that, and I memorized everything, and I exactly made what it was. But you know what happened? When Stravinsky left, when we rehearsed, Diaghilev came in. He had this bamboo thing that he, worked with, like a little cane. And he started to bang down. He says, no, it's this wrong tempo. It's bang, bang, bang. And he says, it would be tam, ta, 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 tam, ta, 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 ta. I said, no. Sergei Pavlovich, I say, that's not true, because I said that Stravinsky wanted to faster, with cha-cha, pa-pa-ti-ti-ta. That's how I made. No, I said, I don't want that. That should be pang, pang. Well, so I did everything, and I changed everything. And then Stravinsky came in. He says, what's the matter with you? I said, I told you that this is wrong tempo. And I put back to the right tempo, to see the way he wanted to see what I mean.
To Diaghilev's mind, ballet resided in the combined impact of the music, the decor, and the dancing. His company was the meeting ground for Picasso, Cocteau, and Chanel. Diaghilev commissioned Stravinsky, Debussy, Ravel, Satie, and Prokofiev to write scores for ballet.
Until then, it was what we danced to Dilip, maximum, and Tchaikovsky was great, but the rest was awful things, like, Minkus and so forth and so on. He introduced all this new music to dancing. The first time that anybody used great painters. Even when I came in first, I did Rossignol, and that was Matisse. We just came from Russia. I really was stupid at the time, didn't know anything. So who Matisse, a painter, so what? For me, painter is a painter. Utrillo again came.
Yes.
I didn't know who it was, Utrillo. And then Rouault came in, and Braque, and then Darin was there. Everybody was there, you see? Because now, all of these people are great.
Diaghilev supervised Balanchine's education as a choreographer, sending him to museums, galleries, and churches. Those years were Balanchine's apprenticeship.
And I must say, if it wouldn't be for him, I wouldn't be here. I started there.
Of the 3 muses who instruct Apollo in the arts, Calliope personifies poetry and its rhythm. Polyhymnia represents mime, but it is terpsichore he dances with. By combining both rhythm and gesture, she reveals dancing to the world. Of the 10 ballets and dozens of operas Balanchine choreographed during his years with the Diaghilev company, only Apollo and Prodigal Son have survived. Prodigal Son, to music by Serge Prokofiev with decor by Georges Rouault, tells the Bible story of the son who rejects his father's love and leaves home. Though Balanchine made no effort to preserve his works, a new dancer could rekindle his interest in an old ballet. In 1978, he revived Prodigal Son for the third time. Balanchine choreographed a ballet about a man whose wife is unfaithful and danced the role of the jealous husband himself in Dark Red Roses, the first talking film made in England in 1929. It was on the set for Dark Red Roses that Balanchine heard the news of Diaghilev's death in Venice. Diaghilev, Balanchine's unofficial wife during their years in the Diaghilev company, was on vacation.
I was in south of France. I remember Hotel Negresca. I was doing my hair. They brought the afternoon paper, and there was Sergei. The Diaghilev is dead. It was crash, boom, crash.
An era had ended. The company Diaghilev had assembled was disbanded, and the conditions that had made Balanchine's work possible were done away with overnight. For the next 3 years, Balanchine lived the life of an itinerant choreographer, working in London and in Copenhagen, Paris, and again in Monte Carlo, where he was hired as ballet master for a new company. For its first season in 1932, Balanchine recruited new talent. 3 young girls who came to be known as the baby ballerinas. Tatiana Ryabushinska, age 15, Tamara Tumanova, age 13, and Irina Baranova, age 12. For Tumanova, Balanchine made Cotillon, a ballet about a girl's first ball and the desperate sense of frivolity that pervades it. Cotillon was a ballet that captured its moment in history, one last frenzied celebration before the events of the future closed in. Despite Cotillon's success, Balanchine found himself at odds with the company's managers, who preferred old standards from the Diaghilev repertory to new ballets. When he was fired, he returned to Paris, where he founded his own company devoted to new works. The year was 1933, and the company was named for it. The venture was financed by Edward James, a wealthy English socialite looking for a present to give his wife, who was a dancer. He decided that a ballet company would be just the thing. With a repertory of 6 new ballets, all of them by Balanchine, the company opened to indifferent reviews. From Paris, it moved on to London, where it lasted no more than 20 performances. But after one of them, Balanchine's future was decided.
I met a man, it was at the Lady Cunard's or something, cocktail party. We had what were all together clothes, and the tall man looked at me, and he said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Me, I'm going to try to get to America because there's nothing to do here." And he said, "I'll get you there." I said, "Who are you?" And he said, "I'm American." And that was Lincoln.
Lincoln Kirstein was the scion of a wealthy Boston family and a recent graduate of Harvard University. He had been following Balanchine's work since Apollo and had come back to Europe with a plan to bring ballet to America. Balanchine arrived in New York in October 1933, full of hope. First, he opened a school, the School of American Ballet, in a 4th-floor studio on Madison Avenue at 59th Street.
There was nobody that could dance here. I mean, we didn't have children at that time, but it was that grown up sort of, teaching them be a little cleaner and, you know, and teach them how to dance better.
Balanchine's first ballet in America was given its premiere in June 1934 on the lawn of an estate in White Plains, New York, before an audience of invited guests. The host was Felix Warburg, father of Edward, one of Kirstein's classmates from Harvard. The ballet, set to Tchaikovsky's Serenade for Strings, was danced by students from the School of American Ballet.
I started Serenade as evening classes to show how to be on the stage. I didn't have any idea to produce anything.
Attendance at rehearsals was irregular, but Balanchine made a virtue of necessity and choreographed each section for as many dances as he had that evening.
I have 17 dancers, and I placed them almost looked like orange grows in California, you know. If I had only 16 even amount, it would be 2 lines. And now people ask me, why do you place them that way? Because I have 17.
Despite the somewhat makeshift conditions, Balanchine worked at transformation. The opening of Serenade is a ritual, reenacted at every performance in which ordinary women become ballet dancers. few months after Serenade's premiere, Balanchine and Kirstein formed the American Ballet. For its first New York season, Balanchine staged 6 of his ballets, including Alma Mater, a new work made to meet the demand for ballets based on American themes. Nevertheless, the reigning critic at the time found Balanchine's choreography too international and suggested that the American ballet find itself an American choreographer. In the fall of 1935, the American Ballet was invited to become the resident company of the Metropolitan Opera. Here, finally, was where ballet belonged, on an opera house stage with a full orchestra. The situation seemed ideal. But the Met's directors were narrow-minded, and Balanchine had big ideas. The management was furious when the applause for his choreography in Carmen stopped the opera. They told him that an evening of ballet was out of the question because there was no money for extra orchestra rehearsals. Balanchine took the news in stride and choreographed a ballet to music the orchestra already knew. The Bat, to music from De Fledermaus, was a hit. For a new production of Orpheus and Eurydice, designed by Chelachev, Balanchine staged the opera's action with dances from his company. The singers were relegated to the pit with the orchestra. This revolutionary notion lasted a total of 2 performances. In the spring of 1937, Balanchine persuaded the Met's directors to allow him to mount a Stravinsky festival, for which he choreographed Card Game, a ballet in 3 deals. Stravinsky himself conducted the performances, and the evening was a success, but nothing could change the management's mind about ballet. In 1938, the American Ballet left the Met and a few months later folded. During the years when Balanchine was making ballets at the Met, he was moonlighting on Broadway and in Hollywood, choreographing dance numbers for musicals and movies. Over the course of his career, he choreographed 17 Broadway shows. Balanchine's personal life and his work were inseparable. And in 1938, after the Christmas Eve performance of I Married an Angel, he married Vera Zorina, the star of the show. To Balanchine's way of thinking, the distinction between high art and popular entertainment wasn't worth making. When the Ringling Brothers Circus asked him to choreograph a ballet for 14 elephants, he agreed and commissioned Stravinsky to write the score. Balanchine went to work in Hollywood for Sam Goldwyn, who commissioned choreography for his Goldwyn Follies. For I Was an Adventuress, Balanchine staged a fantasy version of Swan Lake, starring Zorina, and making a cameo appearance, he conducted the orchestra.
That was fine. Was that tempo right, Miss Vronsky?
Yes, fine.
For the movie version of On Your Toes, Balanchine supervised the filming of Slaughter on 10th Avenue and other dance numbers he had choreographed for the show on Broadway. In 1941, the American ballet was temporarily revived to go on a goodwill tour of South America, sponsored by the State Department. Balanchine made two major new ballets for export, Ballet Imperial and Concerto Barocco. The end of the tour was the end of the company. Balanchine's goal, his own company, must have seemed more unlikely than ever, but he continued to make ballets for other companies and contented himself with work.
I don't care about that. In future, I wouldn't know what it is. To me, today is everything.
With Kirstein, Balanchine formed a new company under a new name. Divorced from Zorina, he married Maria Tolci, one of his dancers. Ballet Society was launched in 1946 in the auditorium of the Central High School of Needle Trades in New York with an important new ballet. Balanchine had commissioned the score from Paul Hindemith.
I used to have a concert at home, nice apartment, 2 pianos, and a friend. I worked on Broadway, you see, and I had little money, so I asked him to write something for a piano with little strings, you know, so that I can play at home. So he said, oh yes, I have a few weeks. And he himself did the variations, the theme he invented and made variations, he called them for tempo.
Within 2 years, Ballet Society had 800 subscribers, enough to justify booking the company into the city center, a bigger theater, for a few performances. At one of these, a lawyer named Morton Baum, chairman of the city center's finance committee, saw Balanchine's latest work, a ballet called Orpheus, and was moved to action. He invited Ballet Society to take its place beside the New York City Opera as the New York City Ballet, with the city center as its permanent home. The inauguration took place on October 11, 1948, with a program no other ballet company in the world could equal. The curtain went up on Concerto Barocco. Set to Bach's double violin concerto, this ballet was to become a standard fixture of the new company's repertory. The second ballet was Orpheus, Balanchine's retelling of the Greek myth, to a score by Stravinsky. Orpheus makes a pact with a dark angel who leads him into Hades, where he rescues his wife, Eurydice. Blindfolded, Orpheus pledges not to look at her until they have ascended to earth. Eurydice, fearing that she has lost his love, implores him to tear the mask from his eyes. The program closed with Symphony in C, a ballet Balanchine had choreographed the year before for the Paris Opera. The music was a recently discovered symphony by Georges Bizet, and the choreography marked the exuberant start of a new era.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, is a complete change of pace from the New York City Center Ballet Company, with a courtesy because George Balanchine did a special choreographing job on this, Andre Diaghilev and Deanne Adams and members of the company.
theater is to entertain. My approach to the theater is to entertain the public.
At the same time as he was building a repertory, Balanchine was cultivating a larger audience for ballet. In 1954, he choreographed The Nutcracker, and over the years, it proved to be the New York City Ballet's bread and butter. On Christmas Eve, 1958, it was televised live, with Balanchine himself in the role of Drosselmeyer.
Clara loves the Nutcracker. It is the best present Godfather Drosselmeyer has ever brought her. Oh, and this is more than Fritz can bear. Poor Nutcracker.
The School of American Ballet continued to furnish Balanchine with dancers. In 1940, it awarded its first scholarships, one of them to an 11-year-old girl named Tanaki Leclerc. By the 1950s, the first generation of dancers trained by Balanchine since childhood had come of age, and with them, American ballet came into its own. A style began to emerge. Balanchine was at home in his adopted country and at home in his work.
I am foreigner until now, though I am really American, more than anybody.
In Western Symphony, he set a ballet to American music and celebrated the romance of the Old West. Balanchine's fondness for America ran deep, and the range of his ballets that draw on American material is broad and surprising. He used the music of an American composer, Charles Ives. In Ivesiana, Balanchine choreographed a romantic adagio set to music romantic and peculiar enough to support the notion of a woman who never touches the ground.
Now see what she is at. Her feet go wickety-whack. Now you do the same, each pretty little dame. Point your foot and point your toe, hands above and feet below.
In square dance, Balanchine made an American subject universal, set to music by Vivaldi.
Telling you what to do, now you do it too. Be sure you follow through. Dance to the center and back right in. Now turn right out and away you go. Turn again and don't be slow. Couples go round in the do-si-do. Now come right back and on we go. Do-si-do and around once more. Lift your feet right off the floor. Keep your feet right in time. Strawberry, raspberry, lemon, and lime. Chase the rabbit, chase the squirrel, chase that pretty girl round the world. Chase that possum, chase that coon, chase Manhattan on the moon.
An air of excitement and expectancy surrounded the company. New ballets were sold out weeks in advance. The audience was eager to see what Balanchine would do next. For Tanaki Leclerc, whom he married, he choreographed La Valse. The variety of the repertory was astounding. Balanchine made ballet a vital art, open to everything, electronic music, the theater of Bertolt Brecht, even modern dance. In 1959, he invited Martha Graham to share in a new work. Though Balanchine's work was clearly in the service of the classical tradition, it was also adventurous and innovative. Time and again, he confounded the audience's expectations. What he was doing was not what they thought of as ballet.
Sousa is a composer that was influenced, or he was a pupil of Offenbach. And he played, I think, violin or viola in Offenbach's orchestra. He was Portuguese, I think, something. But he wrote French Offenbachian type of music and marches. And marches that he wrote adopted here by our army. It's a 120 metronome, which is a French march. It's very fast walking. Did you see French people walk? They walk like mad. Tam-pam, tam-pam. See, that's how Americans walk. Why? Because of Sousa.
In 1964, the New York City Ballet was given a new home at Lincoln Center. The New York State Theater was designed to Balanchine's specifications, and on its stage, he recreated the glory of the Imperial Ballet in America.
We are prepared to dance on the big stage. As a matter of fact, I stage everything for a big stage, and when we danced at the city center, was not enough room. And I always had in mind that someday we'll have an enormous stage.
Great performances is made possible by a grant from Exxon, the National Endowment for the Arts, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, this station and other public television stations.
If history repeats itself, then a key to understanding the present is to look at the past. You can relive America's history by enrolling in The American Story, a college credit television course you can take at home. It's our story, a vivid portrait of the life and times of those who shaped our nation's history. Enroll now in The American Story.
College comes to you with this KET telecourse. Registration is now in progress at colleges and universities throughout Kentucky. For a free telecourse booklet, call 1-800-432-0970.
This is KET, your Kentucky network. This is Channel 54, WCVN, Covington, Kentucky. Public television for Northern Kentucky.
Great performances is made possible by a grant from Exxon, the National Endowment for the Arts, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, this station and other public television stations.
it's impossible to explain certain things that are not related to regular life. What we are trying to do, we're all like that. We try to explain certain things that are unexplainable. Everything that's around here is made out of the same material. But there is another thing, it's very important that it's not made of the material. You see, it's made of something, but it doesn't belong to this world. You see, the real world is not here.
George Balanchine and Igor Stravinsky were of one mind about music and dance. With Stravinsky, Balanchine made classical ballet a modern art, beginning in 1928 with Apollo. He was 20 years old when the impresario Serge Diaghilev introduced them.
It was 1925. I just met him. First of all, you have big respect. He's a Russian, but very sophisticated. He's 23 years older than I am. He's like my father. Probably, you know, this music to play during Diaghilev time, but during Diaghilev,
yeah,
Apollon was impossible. They laughed at it. How? My God, what's, you know, they couldn't calculate. What awful, you know. And Prodigal Son, all the stuff was typical. Now people whistle on the street, you know.
Not always in the street.
No.
Maybe in the bathroom.
No. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because they think they are absolutely safe.
Mm-hmm. And nobody can hear them.
Take some more. Let's be drunk.
Like Stravinsky, Balanchine had come from Russia, where he had been trained in ballet at the Imperial School and in music at the Conservatory. He looked back on Apollo as the turning point of his career, the ballet in which he came of age.
Young man, tell me, where did you see Apollo walking on his knee? And I said to him, Mr. So-and-so, I want to ask you, where did you see Apollo?
Both Balanchine and Stravinsky resettled in America, where Balanchine built a company of his own, the New York City Ballet. Their partnership continued and culminated in 1957 with a ballet called Agon.
It's a competition. I said, let's make series of dancing. And he told me that he has the idea of doing like an old type of French court dancing, or peasant dancing.
In Balanchine's hands, classical ballet incorporated the past in the present, and nowhere was this more apparent than in Agon, a ballet that reconciled the French dance forms of the 17th century with the anxiety of the 20th. In its nervous intensity, its nakedness of execution, Agon was unlike any ballet that had ever been made before. Balanchine and Stravinsky shared a deep sense of responsibility to the past. The classical tradition made possible an exchange of ideas over time, across the centuries. Stravinsky used works by other composers as the subjects for his own.
I like Mozart very much, so much that I steal the music of Mozart. And I feel that I have the right to steal because I love it.
Likewise, Balanchine reinvented the past in his ballets, appropriating the majesty of the Imperial Russian ballet, the mood of the Paris opera in the 19th century, and the setting of La Sylphide, a 19th century ballet by Auguste Bournonville. But where La Sylphide is a novel, a full-length story ballet, Balanchine's Scotch Symphony is a poem on the same subject.
I love Beethoven, but you can't do anything to it. You're not supposed to do. I like some music that I consider more danceable than the other.
In French, people say dansant, musique dansant. In English, you cannot say, there's no word like that. Danceable music, how would you say? It's appetizing for dancing, you see? It makes us aware of time. Now you could dance Mozart, but Beethoven you can't unless it's waltz. The sound produces certain type of enjoyment. And if anybody moves, you will just disturb and you don't add anything. I feel that music is like an aquarium. It's all around you. It's like a fish goes through the water. The music is the aquarium, and dancing is the fish. Verdi, from beginning to the end, you can dance his opera.
To Balanchine's way of thinking, dance, like music, was under no obligation to tell a story or to imitate scenes from life.
Doesn't have to portray anybody. It's not our business to say that we're going to show you how awful your life is. The guy that just lost, the wife left him. Poor man wants to kill himself and goes to the theater, and what he sees, that nobody is divorcing, nobody has any wife that's left. It's just people dance. He says, oh, that's not art, that's not very interesting. People like to imagine that there is a story. Mozart wrote so many symphonies, for instance. It doesn't mean anything except the number 40. And it doesn't say anything except music.
Music can express nothing. That's my conviction. It can express itself only. The music expresses itself, and very eloquently. Expressing itself, it creates forms.
Balanchine's choreography was formalist. Some people called it abstract.
What is abstract? They mean storyless, but they could be a meaning in it. You see, the people that meet, that one person gives a hand and the girl embraces, it's already has a meaning in it. See? A duet is a love story almost. So how much story you want?
Balanchine broke his own rule and proved the exception with narrative ballets in which the plot is an organizing principle for the dancing. He choreographed Cervantes' Don Quixote and danced the role of the Don himself, with Suzanne Farrell as Dulcinea. To music by Felix Mendelssohn, he staged A Midsummer Night's Dream. In it, Titania, Queen of the Fairies, wakes up under the spell of Oberon's magic and falls in love with the first creature she sees. Balanchine's fondness for Shakespeare's play dated back to his childhood in St. Petersburg when he appeared in it in the role of a bug.
I remember Midsummer Night's Dream in Russian. If you want, I can recite you now the whole thing.
Like Stravinsky, Balanchine regarded himself as a craftsman.
We don't create, actually. We assemble what God created. See, it's already there, anyhow. You just choose. You just take what's in front of you and you manipulate, you put it together. This inspiration, it's not anything that is all of a sudden like a stomach ache. There's no such thing as inspiration. You have to work. We don't dance spiritual feelings on the stage. It's a purely physical because you have a body on the stage that must move.
In 1976, choreographing Union Jack, Balanchine salvaged material from an unsuccessful ballet no longer in the repertory.
In every little weak work, there was little moment right. Sometimes even I take this moment and I use somewhere else.
Fine. Can you whistle?
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Fine. Fine, all right.
You can do it to this?
Yeah, wouldn't
All
be
right.
a great ballet, but will be a few steps.
Okay,
right?
we'll go over here
All
and
right.
get out of your way.
Though his choreography nearly always looked definitive and inevitable, Balanchine could come up with any number of steps to fit the same piece of music.
Arabesque on point and two, and then do entrecise, échappé, and that repeat that, right? And I'll say 1, 2, and start together.
Okay.
All right. 1, 2.
Can you make any variations to Yankee Doodle?
Yeah,
different
we can
rhythm?
do in form of tarantella. All right, I can show you something. Would you please play something like that? Now, would you
Now,
almost...
Putt and Ginger, you see,
before, but you lift
he shows them what he wants them to do, and his hands do the thing he wants
and
the feet to do.
and then...
You see, his hands are
Fine,
doing the step
fine,
that he expects
right.
the feet to do.
Ready, go, and...
Hooray!
Sonny, how about a waltz?
Don't ask me. Let's ask Mr. Balanchine. A waltz?
Fine, we'll do something. So I'll ask Carl and George to come in again.
All right, you're going to have all three
of them would do. All right, supposing I'll show you first. See, I'm sorry, I have to take a little time. Just
Okay, sure.
second.
Now, Putt and Ginger, you know, one of the ways a choreographer works, as you see, is actually kind of going through the steps by dancing them with the ballet dancers. And, of course, Mr. Balanchine is a dancer, too. That's how he's gotten to be a choreographer. And he goes right through it and tells them what he wants them to do.
Then you stop, right? Ready? Fine. Go. And 1. All right. Oh, right. Oh, come on. Well, you know, I'm very sorry, but I mean, you have to practice a little longer.
If he showed the movement and the dancer can't execute it 100%, he changed it. With the other choreographer, they would allow you to fall on your nose, but they wouldn't change the choreography because it doesn't come that easy. From him, it's used to pour.
Dancer's body is the tool when I make it, I make for this particular person. You see, I not for somebody else. And you're looking not at me, you're looking at them. I look all the time and I see dancers and I borrow from them. I use what they are. I know that this person jumps very high and turns very fast, and I use this. It's like you use ability of a horse to run, or you use a pussycat. You cannot teach pussycat what you want, but you will make her do what she wants. But really, she gives me the idea, like Murka. I just start to play, and she starts to jump, and I developed that jump. And she started to really go backwards, and fly even. She loved it. How did you train her? I didn't train her. She trained me. What I see. Ballet belongs to a dancer that is now, at this moment, in front of your eyes. Choreographer doesn't exist.
Balanchine's selflessness is most apparent in the vehicles he made for his dancers. Since its premiere in 1960, Tchaikovsky Pas de Deux has been a showcase for many dancers, and Balanchine adapted its choreography to each new cast.
down and think about dance. You have to dance. So you get up and you start moving. And you take the people and you move them.
Balanchine's choreography had its origins in the classroom, where he experimented with new combinations and cultivated a style.
And I have certain ideas how to develop and what I want to see. I don't even know what it is, but I push people to certain level that I like. I have to satisfy myself. I have to look and say I like.
The studio was Balanchine's laboratory, and ballet training was his science. The School of American Ballet continued to supply him with dancers trained in the technique he had been brought up in as a student at the Imperial Ballet School. Balanchine took this technique and deliberately exaggerated certain aspects of it.
I wanted to have a certain way of dancing. We came from Russia and we had this technique of feeling the stage. But still with this, I was moving these legs out more and more turnouts and stronger knees and more turns and bigger jumps.
Balanchine's approach to training dancers was both highly clinical and deeply personal.
You have to know what they need. You have to know what's lacking. As some people, they have a little more of that and less of this, you see. The bodies are different. One acquires a little faster speed, the other one have a little more of elevation. You have to watch everyone separately, see what each one needs. And you insist on something that they have to memorize. See, memories are very short. They also, body is lazy.
The speed, the clarity, the sharp attack that Balanchine demanded came to be the New York City Ballet's trademark. Fascinated by the workings of the human body and curious about its limits, Balanchine got people dancing bigger and faster than anyone ever had before.
While you stage, you teach people, because you invent the step. You force them to learn something that they didn't know yet. Everyone learns a certain amount, and they always think this is enough. Finally it comes to something that, my God, I could do that. I say, oh, yes, you can. I like tall because you can see more. I like women. Women are more flexible and they have a more ideal body for technique, for speed, for a fine technique. Boys made to jump and to lift the girls or to support the girl, but boys don't have a speedy leg because they are not built that way. So I know what is dancing. And I also learn how to teach women. Almost nobody knows. I think Petipa and I. dancer is like Prince Consort. He's not a king, and she's the queen. The rest of the arts are, of course, men. Only ballet is woman. It's like wine. To me, it's a female and it's not male. The earth is woman. Moist is woman. All woman.
The New York City Ballet was Balanchine's empire. With Lincoln Kirstein's help, he had built it, and he used it as a platform for the music he loved. For Ravel, Tchaikovsky, and Stravinsky, Balanchine mounted festivals of ballets set to their works. He invited other choreographers to share in his company. One of them, Jerome Robbins, eventually came to stay. In its home at the New York State Theater, the New York City Ballet flourished. By the 1970s, there were over 100 dancers on the roster, all of them handpicked by Balanchine. He taught class, he cast the repertory, and oversaw the details of every production. Balanchine lived at the theater and rarely missed a performance, watching from his post in the wings. Nothing escaped his attention.
I remember perfume very well. I give few girls, I give them some perfume. Not because I like them, but because I like to know where they are. When I come to the theater, I already know this is so-and-so. I know everything going on there.
I have to feed this company. See, like you have to be a chef in a restaurant and you're constantly cooking. And if I didn't cook, we wouldn't have a company.
Balanchine was an excellent cook, and every year at Easter, he prepared a Russian supper for his friends.
I do work for a theater and for people that pay. It's a professional kind of a job to prepare little pies for people that pay some money to see. You see, that's what my business is. It's my business to make repertoire. It's like a restaurant. You have to cook, you have to appease lots of people.
Balanchine was notorious for his ability to coax Stravinsky out of a bad mood with his cooking.
He loved to eat, for instance, and I used to tell him, describe how wonderful would be wonderful Russian small cutlets in the sour cream and with little mushrooms, you know, and so forth and so on, and vodka he loved, and all the little hors d'oeuvres, Russian zakuska is around. So I started to tell him that he immediately, you know, forgets everything, and he starts to, you know, be very happy about this.
Even to last moment when I came here to see him, about a week before he died, I know that I told him how I could prepare him and bring it, this wonderful, and he looked at me and he tried to say something, and then I said, what? And he, in Russian, he screamed finally one word, when?
Together, Balanchine and Stravinsky had steered a course for the classical tradition in the 20th century. Of the more than 400 works Balanchine choreographed over his long career, 39 of them were set to music by Stravinsky.
You know what? It's amazing that I didn't realize. When you look at this, the 12 violin start, it looks like it's a little softer, the whole thing, and no rhythm in it. I mean, no pulse.
No.
But now I hear the pulse. It's almost like a shaka.
Yeah, because they made accents, to be sure.
That's what it is. You're not supposed to, you know what I mean? Because you don't have to really accentuate time to be in time.
No. We have to be sure
it's a little bit,
ourselves.
Yeah. Well, like planets, they really, I mean, the world. I always say that we are so wrong, but what is right, it's our feeling is more right than our calculation.
Our relation.
Yeah.
And they are not always the same.
Yeah.
They are different.
Yeah.
They are different.
Yeah.
In some years, you will have different relations with the same music. And this one will be right.
In 1941, Balanchine choreographed Balustrade to Stravinsky's Violin Concerto, and in 1972, he choreographed the same music again. Stravinsky Violin Concerto was one of 30 ballets in the New York City Ballet Stravinsky Festival, held a year after Stravinsky's death.
Certain things that I want, musically. I used to talk to Stravinsky. He used to tell me certain suggestions. After he's gone, if Tchaikovsky would be around, or Mozart would be around, or Brahms, or anybody like that here, but we don't have anybody anymore, you see. Everybody's gone. Actually, is gone. His body is gone, but he's here. At the end only, I made gesture to Stravinsky. At the end, I said, "How do you do?"
When Balanchine finally returned to Russia, it was with his company in 1962 and again in 1973. He was reunited with his brother Andrei, a composer. In Leningrad, the New York City Ballet danced on the stage of the Mariinsky Theater, where Balanchine had appeared as a boy.
They loved all of it. They would get up and don't leave. So every day almost I had to come out in front of them and say, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you tomorrow again, let's go home, all of that.
By the 1970s, the New York City Ballet had attracted an enormous audience, and government officials and organizations of all kinds stood in line to bestow their awards on Balanchine. But early on, he had learned to do without public approval. And now that it finally came, it seemed incidental. Balanchine had accomplished what he had set out to do on his own.
People dance while I'm here, they dance that way. I'm gone, they will continue dancing, but somebody's going to rehearse them different. So it all will be a little different, with different approach, different intensity. So if a few years go by and I won't be here, so it will be my balance, but will look different.
The themes of grief and separation had always been present in Balanchine's work, but toward the end, they grew more insistent. In his last ballets, he choreographed his own farewell. On the morning of April 30th, 1983, George Balanchine died. His funeral was held 3 days later in the Russian Orthodox Church where he had been a member. At the New York State Theater, the New York City Ballet danced as scheduled.
Stay tuned for the McNeil-Lehrer News Hour.
Great Performances is made possible by a grant from Exxon, the National Endowment for the Arts, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, this station and other public television stations.
I am your new form master. My name is Tipping.
Masterpiece Theater presents Roy Marsden in the beloved classic, Goodbye, Mr. Chips.
You have spent your whole adult life looking after other people's boys. I want you to have one of your own.
Goodbye, Mr. Chips on Masterpiece Theater.
You see, Chips, we all love you.
Sunday nights at 10, 9 Central, and Friday nights at 8, 7 Central.
Evening and weekend programming on KET is made possible in part by contributions to the KET Fund for Excellence. The Honorable Order of Kentucky Colonels and the Hyatt Regency Hotel, Lexington, are patrons of the Fund for Excellence. KET thanks the Kentucky Colonels and the Hyatt Regency for helping to make possible quality programs on KET.
This is KET, your Kentucky network. This is Channel 54, WCVN, Covington, Kentucky, public television for Northern Kentucky.